Alright guys, and welcome to another video. Today we're going to be counting down the top 10 movie references in classic World of Warcraft. So the idea for this video came to me at about 6 o'clock in the morning. I was very drunk because I'd just done a video call with my mum and family and friends for her birthday and everything. And I stayed up to about 6 o'clock in the morning watching this absolutely whack 80s film called Cruel. Absolutely great film. And did a little research into it, and I found out there's actually a reference to it in classic World of Warcraft, and it got me thinking, what other movie references are there in World of Warcraft? So I did a little research, and it turns out there are hundreds of them, and there's even over 100 pop culture references just in classic WoW itself. I think Blizzard just really likes to do them, so I picked out my absolute favourites based on my favourite films, because it gives me the opportunity to talk about something other than World of Warcraft for a little bit, which is my favourite kind of video to make. And what I'm going to do is just give you a little bit of trivia and context to each and every film. First of all, we have the film Cruel. So inside Onyxia's lair there is a floating glaive weapon in the lava that intermittently keeps floating up and down, okay, and this refers to when the protagonist, Prince Corwin, acquires the glaive from the lava, because it's the only weapon that can defeat the antagonist called the Beast, who is this freaky alien looking dude, and the name of the Beast is also referenced by the boss in Upper Blackrock Spire. During the 80s we had a little bit of a re-emergence of the swashbuckler fantasy film, so fantasy films that heavily focused on sword fighting, from the classic stories of Robin Hood, the Three Musketeers, and the more well-known like Star Wars and Pirates of the Caribbean. There's a throne in the Badlands inside a tomb that references an iconic scene in one of my favourite films, Conan the Barbarian, where he first discovers his sword. He accidentally stumbles into a tomb when trying to keep warm, and then obviously finds a tomb of warriors and then just nabs off with the sword. A blacksmith in Orgrimmar, when you are qualified enough for expert training, he will say the following: "Not men, not women, not beasts, this you can trust. Steel." Okay, the opening scene of Conan the Barbarian, where Conan's father is talking to him about the origin of their clan, and he directly uses that line. Okay, many people think that Conan is just some corny 80s film with some weird Austrian bodybuilder probably cashing in on the increased interest in the Dungeons & Dragons, Lord of the Rings interest of the time. But Conan Barbarian is actually based on the short stories and novellas of Robert E. Howard, who came along way before The Lord of the Rings, and is considered, especially by me, to be one of the first significant high fantasy writers in existence, really, because the only fantasy that really became before this kind of era in the 1930s was more gothic fantasy, which is its own different category. To be honest, back then the subgenre of high fantasy wasn't actually a used term. It was actually referred to as a sword and sorcery story, which began to emerge in pulp magazines, and I've actually got the book collection just beside my bedside table right now. I'm giving it a little bit of a read, and it is seriously good, and I would recommend it. Thirdly, I want to take a little look at Gadgeton, because it has a very similar portrayal and illustration to Bartertown from the third Mad Max film called Beyond Thunderdome. This is because of the large cage in the middle of the town, which before patch 1.11 allowed Horde and Alliance players to enter and fight against each other without the guards interfering, okay? And in the film there is an iconic arena called the Thunderdome, described clearly by the iconic quote from the film, "Two men enter, one man leaves." The Mad Max franchise started as a low-budget Australian film depicting the near future from the point of the 1980s anyway, where oil would run out and the world would descend into a lawless dystopian world where people would fight over the last scraps of oil. By the time the third film rocked up, the franchise had become very Hollywoodized, or Californicated if you want to call it that, with the casting of characters like Tina Turner into the film, an iconic pop singer of the time. And as much as I do like a bit of Tina, it did kind of ruin the franchise a little bit, but it is still an alright film. But the first two are way better, that's what I'm trying to say. There is actually a character called Katrina Turner, which references her, and you can find her in Gadgeton. People have also pointed out how the town is very similar to Mos Eisley from Star Wars. Now we have another film featuring a pop star. So on the Ironforge side of the Deep Run tram, there is a gnome called Haggle, a clear reference to the character Hoggle from Labyrinth, especially as they look similar and they are both gnomes. Now, this is another one of my favourite films. In fact, it's a family favourite. This is the... can't tell you my surname, but this is the family film. We all watched this film as a kid, and we absolutely loved it. The girl in the film accidentally wishes away her baby brother to the Goblin King, played by David Bowie, and then has to navigate a fantasy labyrinth to rescue her brother, and Hoggle is one of the characters who helps her. I actually used to use a lot of the GIFs from Labyrinth of his character, of David Bowie's character, in my streams, because the Goblin King kind of like is loosely related to me, but nobody really understood the reference because Labyrinth is a bit of an obscure film. In my opinion, this features some of his absolute best singing that is ever done. I'm going to link a song in the description. I'm also going to link a few things in the description that you can look up in your own time that are related to each and every film, just so you know. Just in case any of you ever want to watch the films on this list or read the books that they're based on, it'll be easy for you to look that up in the description of this video. Overall, I just think Labyrinth is a very charmful and comical fantasy, so just watch it. It is great. Moving on to sci-fi now, so I'm not going to lie, there's a lot of Terminator references in World of Warcraft. Firstly, we have an upright mechanical arm in a jar in the Ratchet workshop, very clear reference to the Terminator arm that is recovered by Cyberdyne Systems Corporation. This is when we first discover the interesting time paradox in the Terminator films. In the future, there is obviously this big battle between humans and machines. They go back in time and try and kill the leader of the humans to stop the war. Then the corporation recovers the arm from the first movie, and then later in the future uses it to create Terminators. So without them going back in time, they wouldn't have been able to create themselves, which is obviously an interesting time paradox. Then we have the Beast or Wrath talent with the tagline, "The beast does not feel pity or remorse or fear," which is a line taken straight out of Terminator, which is, listen and understand, that Terminator is out there, it can't be bargained with, it can't be reasoned with, it does not feel pity or remorse or fear, and it absolutely will not stop ever until you are dead. There's a few other cheeky ones. Sometimes the Felguard will say "I'll be back," which is a reference to the third Terminator film. Tier 2 Paladin can obviously be abbreviated to T2, which is the name of one of the Terminators, and it's also called Judgment Gear, referring to the third film and the iconic event in the films called Judgment Day, when obviously the machines judge that humans have a problem with the world and need to be destroyed. Osirian the Unscarred, the last boss of the Ruins of Anchorage raid, yells "You are terminated" whenever he kills a player, which is obviously another quote from Terminator 3 Rise of the Machines. In the game you can attain a sword called the Hanzo sword, which looks a little bit like a samurai sword, which is an obvious reference to the film Kill Bill, where there is a character called Hattori Hanzo who makes the best samurai swords in the world. This sword literally cuts other swords in half, it is that incredibly sharp. Now this is a revenge film about a woman and her husband who get shot by her ex-boyfriend at her own wedding, so not technically a husband, a boyfriend. And then, actually it's technically a wedding rehearsal, but she later wakes up from her coma and goes on this really big killer rampage to kill everyone who was involved in her assassination. Probably my favourite Tarantino film. It's a very typical Tarantino film. He uses very creative and uncommon techniques of his style and narrative in his direction of the film. Sometimes when you ask the Ironforge guards where the alchemist is, they will say, "I should have taken a blue pill instead of a red pill." Okay, this is a Matrix reference when Neo takes the red pill and wakes up from the dream world that has been draped over his eyes. Long story short, he is in a simulated reality, and obviously the blue pill would send him back into that simulated reality, the red pill wakes him up. There's also an NPC at Lights Hope Chapel that says I should have taken a translucent pill, which is a little bit of a parody of the film. And we also have Justin the fishing boy in Stormwind, who will say the quote, "There is no spoon." The Stormwind Secret Service is called SI7, okay, kind of similar to MI6, the British Secret Service heavily featured in the largest film franchise of all time, James Bond. Well, technically there's a film franchise called Blondie from the 1930s that has 3 more films on James Bond, but James Bond still has 2 more films on the entire Marvel series. But probably by the time I've finished making this video, there's going to be 2 more Marvel films, because, about 5 come out every 15 minutes. Technically, the next reference isn't a classic WoW reference, but this will happen during the pre-patch event, the opening of a dark portal. There is a dialogue line that says, "Brothers and sisters of a sword, I would rather fight alongside you than an army of thousands. We are lions. Do you know what's waiting through these demons and beyond that dark portal? Immortality, take it." Okay, this is basically word for word similar to what Achilles says in the film Troy, one of my favourite all-time films again. Apart from, obviously, he doesn't say demons or dark portal, he says like gates or something like that. It's a great epic film about an historic war, also known as the Trojan War. It's just a classic Greek legend with featuring Brad Pitt, and yeah, you definitely should watch this one. During the quest in Dire Maul North, there is a quest to obtain the ogre tannin for the suit, okay? And then, once you've got all that done, there's an event where the ogre walks down and says it puts the tannin in the basket or it gets the mallet again. Clear reference to the film Silence of the Lambs, where the serial killer Buffalo Bill says it puts the lotion on its skin or he gets the hose again. I'm not going to go into details of what exactly happening in that film because it's probably not YouTube friendly. This film is largely considered by most of you the best serial killer thriller ever created, and I probably agree with them on that one. This is another one of my favourite films. There's also 2 character references to the protagonist. First of all, you've got Clarice Foster and in the Thunderbluff Cave, and then you've got Clarice Naltree in Darkshire, referring to the main character, Clarice Sterling, who is the FBI trainee agent who is, does everything in the film. I don't want to ruin it for you, so, go and check it out in your own time. Again, like I said before, guys, links to a lot of the things I've talked about in the description of this video, or, extra information and things like that. If you want to check out these films or the books that they're based on, any other information like that, it's all in the description. If you haven't already, please do subscribe because that really does help out. We have, 3 to 5 uploads going out every single week based on Classic WoW and mainly TBC Classic at the moment. But anyway, my name is MetaGoblin, and until my next video, ciao.